Who doesn't enjoy a good cookout? Nothing brings people together like breaking bread, having a couple beers, and reminding your neighbor Kevin that you can still eat 10 hot dogs in one setting. But in 1989, a cookout devolved into chaos when homeowner William Foulk was confronted by the neighborhood drug dealers who gave him an ultimatum. Cancel your barbecue, stop reporting our crimes, or we will shoot you and burn down your house. Now, you might not like what Bill Foulk did next or how he went about it, but sometimes reasonable men just have to do unreasonable things. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to talk about the Ash Street Shootout. And if you like weird history and weird crime stories, thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Let me know what other stories I should cover next down in the comments. So our story begins in 1987 when William Foulk bought a house in the Hilltop community of Tacoma, Washington for $10,000. Now, before you start making jokes about how affordable homes used to be, Bill kinda got ripped off in this investment. The home had sat empty for over a decade, and during that time, doors had been removed, windows had been busted, and anything of value like plumbing and electrical wires had been ripped out and sold. And this house was also in one of the rougher neighborhoods of Tacoma. But Bill liked a good challenge, and he wanted a fixer-upper, so he was determined to turn this crack house into a crack home. Unfortunately, due to some work and personal things going on in Bill's life, renovations wouldn't begin until 1989, and by that point, the Hilltop community was in the grasp of the crack epidemic. Unfortunately, the street in front of Bill's house had been turned into an open-air drug market. Public drug use and gang-related crime was super common, and the center of all this was a string of houses right across the street from Bill's home. But Bill and his neighbors started organizing. They started reporting crimes, keeping track of license plates coming in and out of their neighborhood, and Bill even installed a video camera on the second floor of his home to keep track of going-ons in the neighborhood. Unfortunately, at this time period, the Tacoma Police Department was severely underfunded and understaffed. The police had adopted a policy of if they weren't witnessing a crime actively happening, they weren't gonna do anything about it. And in September 1989, it was decided that they would cut back from 6 patrols down to 2 in the Hilltop community. The Hilltop community was struggling at this point with 6 patrols, and they were slashing that by 2/3. During a city council meeting, one of the individuals living in the Hilltop community said that they feared for their life and they felt like a lot of the neighbors in the area were on the brink of vigilante action. This is foreshadowing. Foulk decided to schedule a cookout for September 23rd. Now, this cookout was to unify the neighborhood, to remind everyone that there were more good people living in this neighborhood than the gang members and the drug dealers, but also to educate them on how to report crimes. And, you know, to grill some burgers and to have some beers and maybe throw a frisbee around. And once people started arriving, almost immediately the drug dealers across the street started throwing rocks and rotten fruit at party goers, started making threatening gestures, and just being absolute nuisances. They even shot a BB gun at the camera located in the second floor of Foulk's home. Eventually, Bill and some of his work buddies that he had invited to this cookout would cross the street to confront these individuals, and that's when they gave him the infamous ultimatum. Disperse from your cookout, stop reporting our crimes, remove the video camera from the second floor of your house, or else we will shoot you and burn down your house. And you've probably been wondering throughout this video, what did Billiam do for work? Him and his buddies were all Army Rangers. For those of you who do not know what Army Rangers are, they are like the elite infantry units of the United States Army. Their motto is Rangers lead the way, and they operate off of the Big Five philosophy. That's marksmanship, physical training, medical training, small unit tactics, and rapid mobility. An easy way to think about Rangers is they're Marines that scored higher than average on their ASVAB, but then somehow ended up in the wrong recruiter's office. They're not to be messed with. At this point, there were 3 Rangers at the party, but Bill would go back into his home, call up the base, and a dozen more Rangers would show up with their personal firearms and ammunition. This cookout had just turned into a BYOB. Bring your own bullets. Reportedly, they would show up with Browning high-powered 9mm pistols, shotguns, at least one AR-15, an M14, and either a .357 or .44 Magnum revolver. If things popped off, someone was going to yee their last ha, and I say reportedly because we'll get into why there were probably more weapons there than that here in a minute. The Rangers drew up a defense plan and laid down some ground rules. They would not fire unless fired upon first, and if police showed up, they would comply and stop firing. At 9:20, shortly after sundown, the first shots were fired. And shots came from a string of cars parked on the other side of the road from Foulk's home towards his house. The Rangers, of course, returned fire, and one party goer dialed 911. Which the cops would never show up before or do anything when they reported crime. Why would they show up now? Let the boys play. Eventually, the first police officer would try to arrive on the scene, but there was so much gunfire, they retreated. And then 12 police officers would arrive on the scene. At that point, the Rangers would put down their guns and comply completely. And the police immediately detained everyone that had been at the cookout. Why they didn't go and immediately start arresting the reported drug dealers across the street, don't worry about it. But eventually, the police would side with the Rangers, either because they knew about how rough it was in this neighborhood, or one of them was former military, and, you know, that's just how it works out most of the time. The police made the Rangers turn over some of the firearms for evidence, and they would turn over some of the cheaper firearms that they had no sentimental value to, which is why the guns reported were pretty much all bargain bin, pawn shop, super cheap firearms. And the firefight lasted about half an hour. During this time, between 100 and 300 shots were fired, and there were no injuries reported at the time. Later, the Rangers claimed that they hit at least 2 individuals. Not sure what happened to these folks. Either they ran away or they were taken to hospitals super far outside the city. The next day, journalists and detectives were all over this neighborhood, but because of the street's code of silence, they weren't expecting to get very many answers from those who shot at the Rangers. But for some reason, they did. Pretty much all of the drug dealers in this neighborhood came forward to talk to the cops and journalists about what happened, saying that they had been fired upon first and that they had to fire upon the party because the Rangers had laughed at them and made threatening gestures at them. Also, 2 individuals who came forth and was like, yeah, we shot at them, but we were just defending ourselves, had outstanding warrants, and at least one of them was disqualified from owning firearms because of previous crimes. What? Almost immediately, the Ash Street shootout got national attention, and this caused the city of Tacoma to step in and start cleaning up the neighborhoods. None of the Rangers faced any type of charges, and Foulk would retire from the military in 1993. And as of 2022, he still lives in this house. He had patched up all the bullet holes except for one that he left to remind him of the shootout. And many people in this neighborhood claim that the shootout was the catalyst for change that this neighborhood needed. One going as far as saying that the shootout was the best thing to ever happen to the Hilltop community. So, what's the moral of this story? You might not like how Bill Foulk went about it, you might not like what he did, but sometimes the best catalysts for change are reasonable men doing unreasonable things. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for sticking around till the end. If you like it, again, make sure to subscribe. What other stories of weird crimes and, you know, reasonable men doing unreasonable things should I talk about? Of course, eventually I will talk about Marvin Heemeyer, Gary Plauché, Sky King. They will get their own videos eventually, but what other ones would you like to see me talk about? Let me know down in the comments. Until next time, don't forget to stay wild, stay wonderful, and I'll talk to you later.